Hello everybody, my name is Jim Lowe. Welcome to Tomlyn Facebook Live. Today we're going to be talking about summer and summer stressors for you and your pets. The idea being to try to discuss some issues that you are having and what we can do to help you alleviate those, some advice you might be able to take home from our little chat today. Again, my name is Jim Lowe and I am the Technical Services Veterinarian for Tomlyn USA. In this role, it is my directive to try to educate you about the products and the science behind our products, and to try to give as much advice as possible so that you're very comfortable when you go in the stores, when you order our products. A little bit more about me. I am a 1995 graduate of Texas A&M University. So any Aggies out there, gig 'em. I now live south of Atlanta with my wife, who's a veterinary technician, and our 7-year-old daughter. We share our home with 4 cats, of which I would show them to you, but unfortunately can't take them outside because they are indoor cats, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. We do have Biggie the Bulldog, but it's also a little hot for Biggie as well. But again, we live just south of Atlanta, and I practiced for 18 years in private practice prior to coming to Tomlyn with both large and small animals. So much of what we're going to talk about today is just based on my clinical experience. I think it's very important, though, that these are simply suggestions, thoughts, hints, ideas I've come across, and any important medical decisions you're making about your pet, whether it's diet, nutritional, or medical, should be made in conjunction with your veterinary care provider. He or she can best assess the health status of your animal, knows you and your pet better than anybody, and it's always imperative you keep them in the loop. Again, the topic today is summer and summer heat and summer issues and summer stressors. Continue to post questions as we go along. We already have a ton to go across today, but as you come across questions, post them to our Facebook, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can today as well. I guess the first one off today was one about hot spots, a dog that's suffering from hot spots, especially this time of year. What they are, why they seem to be worse this time of year, if there's anything we can do to alleviate those. And the important thing to remember first and foremost is that a hot spot is simply an area of acute moist dermatitis. For whatever reason, an area of the skin becomes inflamed, and with the animal's repetitive licking, it becomes increasingly sore, increasingly red, and inconsistently irritated. It's important to understand that hot spots are a secondary issue, meaning they were started by something underlying it. Certainly with summer, it can be heat and heat stress, insect bites, irritation from fleas. Something causes the animal to damage that skin, and then the cycle of licking and infection and more licking becomes continuous, and it can cause really major problems. So identifying the underlying cause, whether that's allergy, heat, is important, but while we are doing that, we can also do some things to alleviate those secondary problems, which is the pain and discomfort itself. And certainly what we would like to see in a product used is something to keep the animal from licking it, because that is not making that tissue any more healthy. It's actually stimulating more irritation. Antiseptic to that area would be good to have, as well as something just to make it feel better. At Tomlyn, we do offer a product, the Tomlyn Hot Spot Treatment, and that's just that. Contains a topical antiseptic, as well as something to alleviate the pain and inflammation, and then a bitter apple type flavoring in there, so if the animal does choose to lick that area, it's going to be less than appetizing for him or her. So again, to treat the secondary problems, absolutely, it's important we identify the underlying cause ultimately to alleviate that problem. Secondly, out there, the question was, how hot is too hot for our animals to be outdoors? And more importantly, even, when do we know that our animals are getting too hot? Well, I try to keep things simple, and if I feel like it's uncomfortable for me and my family outside, then certainly we need to begin to give some considerations to our pets. Certainly in my condition, in our condition, Biggie, our bulldog, is very heat intolerant. This time of year, Biggie goes out for about 37 seconds a day to do his business, and that is all he can take, and that's a very real issue because bulldogs and many other heat intolerant breeds can get dangerously overheated very quickly, and it can turn into a life-threatening situation. So I think I think using common sense, early mornings, late evenings, certainly not promoting excessive activity, making sure the animal is physically fit for it, are all important. As far as signs of overheating, they can be very subtle. Sometimes I know in people as well, when we recognize we have gotten too hot and we are in heat exhaustion, it is already too late many times, and the symptoms and secondary problems have already started. So certainly in your animals, you really want to watch their breathing for excessive panting, where they become unable to do anything but pant. Certainly things like drooling, evidence of weakness, wobbliness, dizziness, or where the animal suddenly becomes, almost faint or lays out and doesn't want to get up. Those would all be indications that our animals have gotten too heat, and those are medical emergencies. It is important that we get that animal inside. We certainly do not want to cool them off dramatically, meaning no ice baths or frozen bags of ice packed around them. You need to contact your veterinary professional immediately, and they can alert you to some things you perhaps can do in the interim to while you're getting your animal to the veterinary care provider. Well, we just talked about dogs, but what about cats? And certainly in the case of our cats and a lot of cats, they are inside cats, but are there conditions where they might be able to get too hot? And certainly many of these animals have access to sunrooms or like to lay in the windows, and it's very unlikely they're going to experience the same sets of heat stress that a dog is going to. But again, we want to make sure they have access to shady areas, that they're not left in that sunroom, because those sunrooms can certainly get hot, that they have access to water and shade and areas where they can cool down. But again, overall, their exposure to heat is going to be much less. I know in our household, during this time of year, we keep the blinds and curtains closed most of the time to promote a more cool environment in the house. Air conditioner has to work less, makes life more comfortable for everybody, including the cats. We just talked about heat exhaustion, and certainly with this time of year, it is so important. We talk about water. One of the readers wanted to know, speaking of water, how much water does an animal need to remain adequately hydrated? And that is a loaded question. I think given an animal that is healthy, that has no underlying problems, we need to make sure they just always have access to plenty of water. There are certainly breed differences. There are certain underlying medical conditions where an animal may need more or less water. But for the most part, in our healthy pet populations, we just want to make sure there's access to plenty of water, that it is clean, fresh water. I can readily identify with this. As we've said, we have 4 cats and a bulldog in the house. Bagheera, one of our newest additions, is a cat that thinks the water is a play toy. So he'll go in there and sling that water all over, play in it, jump in it, leave all kinds of furry little toys floating in it. Follow that up with Biggie the bulldog, who does tend to drool just a little bit, who has quite a habit of drinking lots of water. When he's done, there's lots of drool and foam and all kinds of good stuff floating in the water. So for us, it is very critical that we constantly monitor the quality of that water, because with changes in that quality, with dirty water, it can cause animals to become turned off and not want to drink. So we really want to promote good quality water, plenty of access inside and outside the house, even to the point of putting small pieces of ice in there to make sure that water does not become overheated, which can become a real problem in water sources that are kept outside. So again, adequate supplies, and again, with healthy animals, just making sure they have plenty of access to it. Overconsumption in most situations is not nearly as much of a concern as there is underconsumption. In your outside pets and inside pets too, another quick take home that you can think about is just watching them when they go out to do their business. When they urinate, a normal animal at normal hydration should normal adequate amounts, not excessively. And certainly if you begin to notice during a short period of time no urine, that would certainly prompt a call to the veterinarian to discuss. Again, on those outside dogs, the owner had a question about protecting dogs' paws on the outside. Apparently her backyard has lots of rock and stone and concrete and asphalt, and was concerned about those paws. Should there be a concern? Absolutely. Remember, the paws on these animals are simply skin. They're just a different type of skin, a much tougher, harder type of skin, but is very susceptible to heat, is very susceptible to the demands of heat. So it's important that we allow them areas that can get out of the sun, preferably get into the grass, get onto blankets, get onto protective flooring that is not heated or hot, because again, it can do damage. It can cause burns and permanent damage if we don't watch it pretty closely. even up into the point of perhaps keeping a little small water tray out there where they can walk through the water to cool their feet would be another opportunity there for you to give them some areas of relief. We do, at our company, offer a product called Protect-A-Pad. This is Tomlyn's Protect-A-Pad, and it is simply that. It is a lanolin-based moisturizer that we can rub on the feet of these animals and on their elbows as well. It prevents callus formation. It treats those dry, cracked pads. It can be used in summer and winter. Oftentimes in winter, with the ice and the salts that are used, the paws can become very damaged and irritated. So that's another good opportunity for the Protect-A-Pad product to be implemented. Let's see. Oh, back to the summer and summer road trips. An owner is going to be traveling from Maine to Florida with her 2 animals, a 2-day trip. And she wants to make that ride as pleasant for them as possible. And that's a very good question, especially this time of year, as increasingly more and more people are going to be doing that. I think first and foremost, we need to make sure our animals are comfortable riding in the car. And, you know, it's happened before. We don't ever put these animals in the car, then suddenly it's time for the family road trip, and we put them in there and all heck breaks loose, and it's just a miserable experience for them and us as well. So we want to make sure they're comfortable in the car, that they like going on little road trips to the bank, etc. during the week, that is not the issue. Moving forward from that, we certainly seem to find that animals that might suffer from a little bit of nausea in the car, that it is better to travel on an empty stomach. So we might recommend to these animals that we ride on an empty belly, and when we stop for the day, then certainly we give them their food for the day. But that empty stomach is much less likely to suffer from the effects of nausea. When we want to make sure we stop plenty of times and exercise these animals, always on a leash and always under our guidance. We can certainly give them water at that point and give them a little exercise. That may fatigue them a little bit, and then getting back into the car and make that ride just a little bit more pleasant for everybody. One thing you also might think about, just to alleviate some of that anxiety, some of that stress, would be a product like we have here. This is the Relax and Calm Chew by Tomlyn. It is a product with L-tryptophan, which is a precursor to a neurotransmitter that makes animals feel better, sleep better, and also contains chamomile. Chamomile is an ingredient. Some of you are comfortable with chamomile tea, but chamomile has anti-anxiety properties in it. There's also some ginger in there to alleviate some of that nausea. So much of car anxiety that we see is simply the nausea involved. So with the ginger in that product, makes it a little bit easier on the stomach and perhaps alleviates some of those signs. So again, I think the important thing is to be prepared, to stop often, to exercise these animals, consider traveling on an empty stomach, and certainly consider a supplement like the Relax and Calm, just to alleviate that anxiety, make them relax a little bit, and make the trip much more fun for everybody. Moving to summer cookouts. Owner likes to have lots of summer cookouts with friends and family, is concerned about her pets. I think there are a lot of concerns there. Certainly many animals are not as social. They're used to the family, and when we have loud crowds, loud noises, that can certainly cause some problems. So again, something like the Relax and Calm from Tomlyn that we just talked about would be good. It alleviates some of that anxiety, just relaxes them so they're not stressed out with all the noises and people laughing and having a good time around that summer cookout. I think most importantly to stress would be no scraps to the animals. That cannot be emphasized enough. So many times, even if the owners are disciplined, it's the guests that think it's nice to be nice to the dog. They want to make friends, give them a little scrap of pork or a little scrap of meat, and that can set off a huge cascade of events, making that dog dangerously, if not life-threateningly ill. So I think it's very important we first and foremost alert everybody that's at the party that under absolutely no circumstances should there be any scraps given to their pets. Because again, it can become major medical crises if they do. Up until the point you might even want to tell them, if we have to take our animal to the vet because of the scrap you gave them, you can come help pay that veterinary bill. Hey, shock them if you have to, but I cannot stress enough to you how dangerous ingestion of some of these fatty barbecue foods can be to these animals. And certainly we want to make sure we restrict their access to the patio, to the grills, to the people, as well as to those hot surfaces, because we certainly don't want an injury from that Make sure you pay attention where you're putting your garbage disposal unit there. We don't want the animals crawling in the garbage for many of the same reasons. They might figure out their own way to get those scraps, and certainly not something we want to have them exposed to. So, anxiety control, certainly restricting their activity around the grill and around the trash. Stress, stress, stress that no scraps at all of any kind should be given to these animals because we love them and we want to keep them healthy. Now we're coming to a question about walking in the woods and when's the best time to walk in the woods. And I think that's kind of goes back to the heat thing. You know, when's the best time to go? I think when we would like to go, early in the morning, early at night. Certainly that's when temperatures seem to be most acclimate to that. I think it's also important to make sure that your animal's physically fit. You know, certainly with a good physical examination and a veterinary check by your veterinarian. Tell them you'd like to implement a little bit of an exercise regimen with your animals. Is it appropriate for my animal because of his breed, because of his body condition, because of his age? Once you have the clearing or the okay and the check off from your veterinarian, they can even, he or she can also get together an exercise plan for you as far as specified lengths of time, the types of terrain, how often during the week. And that is going to make it more enjoyable for you and your pet and build that bond that you have with that animal even more solidly. So again, cool times of the day for me I think would be optimum. Certainly an animal that has been vet checked and is ready to go, and a regimented, organized routine I think is important as well, will make those hikes in the woods the most enjoyable for you. And you know, it's not just the young dogs. We certainly know in some of these older dogs that exercise helps. These animals that are beginning to suffer from joint discomfort, we know exercise is helpful. It helps with flexibility, it helps with mobility, it helps build muscle mass to support those joints and give it more structure. So again, your veterinarian can certainly evaluate the degree of discomfort and joint involvement your animal may have, but you might want to consider a joint supplement, something like Tomlyn's joint and hip product. Tomlyn joint and hip product contains glucosamine and chondroitin, which we know is going to be beneficial for that cartilage as it ages. It's going to provide the nutritives and the building blocks necessary to maintain that cartilage structure. It also contains fish oils, and fish oils we know, but even in people, have been shown to relieve much of the joint discomfort that's experienced. So another good reason to visit with your vet about exercise programs in the woods or out, and certainly something like a joint or hip supplement may be perfectly appropriate for your animal in those cases. Unfortunately, with walking outside, there are risks. This particular risk by this caller was about poison ivy. Can animals get poison ivy? Can I get poison ivy from my dog or cat? And the answer is absolutely yes on both counts. Fortunately, our dogs specifically and cats are covered with a lot of hair, so they're somewhat protected from the oils that come from the poison ivy plant. But under the belly, along the face, areas where there's not a lot of fur or hair, they can absolutely develop that same irritating, itchy rash with the sores and the bumps and the moist exudate or moist wound area that is formed from poison ivy. So certainly that's something to be on the alert for. And unfortunately, because they have all that hair, they can still come in contact with those oils, and you can develop the irritation and the rash by coming into contact in the oils simply by rubbing, petting your loved one after the walk. So certainly first, learn to identify that plant and avoid it if at all possible, and you might also consider always giving a good bath to your animal when you get back to remove any of those excess oils, those poison ivy oils that the animal may have come in contact to. Which brings us to another point, which was about ticks. And certainly I think this is one where, with all the technology, with all of the advances in active ingredients, this is where we really should visit with our veterinary professional. There are so many options out there now, and they can choose the one that is most appropriate for your animal at the right price, that's most convenient for you to administer. And certainly for me, I think that's a really, really, really efficient way to go. One public health issue, I should say, or one thing I really want you guys to think about, we had personal friends that were human physicians, and an interesting fact is that most people that contract tick-borne disease, or a large majority of them, contract them from picking ticks off of their animals or of themselves. So never, never, without gloved hands, try to pick a tick off of yourself. always wear gloved hands, protection. There are lots of different ways out there that are recommended to remove them, but simply taking a bare hand and pulling a tick off can certainly potentially expose you to many of the tick-borne diseases that we so fear. Let's see what else we have here in the, check my screen. Well, there you go again. Here comes another summer stressor, 4th of July, fireworks, thunderstorms, loud noises, and this caller is very concerned, as with such things. Her pet is forced to sleep with her, and she's very, very worried. Her neighborhood in particular thinks the 4th of July starts about the 1st, and those fireworks go from the 1st through the 4th, so it's not just the night of the 3rd or the night of the 4th where we have to be concerned about that. And certainly, again, this is somewhere where a product like the Relax and Calm would be very helpful. It's going to alleviate much of that anxiety. It's just going to make the animal more comfortable. One thing you might think about doing, especially on the night of the 4th of July, is what we call a storm closet. And that can just be a safe place, a dark closet. We want it nice and dark where they can't see the flashes of those fireworks or thunder for that matter, where we can go in there, we can put a nice blanket, we can put comfortable bedding, we can put their favorite toys in there. We can also put a radio in there and put that radio up there pretty loud in volume. We want it to drown out the booms and other things from fireworks and or thunder. And with that, it provides them a secure space where many of those triggers, those stimuli that cause these animals to be so stressed out are alleviated. So certainly that, in conjunction with a calming product, might get us through the hump, but certainly it's a major concern. So anything we can do to alleviate their exposure to those stressors, even up to and considering, you know, maybe boarding them for the night of the 4th of July, something like that, are all, there's no fully right answer that fits in every situation, but those are certainly some ideas that might get you down the path to alleviating some of the anxiety in your pet. One of the favorites, you know, wanting to know about dogs and swimming. Do all dogs know how to swim? Should we be concerned about our pets around the swimming pool? I think all dogs are born with some level of ability to stay afloat. That's a survival skill, but certainly breed predilection can dictate that. Certainly some dogs are better swimmers than others. Certainly body condition, health conditions are all part of that as well. I think for the most part, if possible, we need to restrict the activities or exposure to animals to swimming pools. There are chemicals in those pools that can become very, very irritating over time, just as they can do us. They can irritate the eyes and the ears. We happen to have something here, just a sterile eye wash. If your animal does get in the pool, not ever a bad idea to flush those eyes out of those chemicals and water that they may have been exposed to in the pool. Dogs are very susceptible as well to things like swimmer's ear in kids. We know when our kids swim all year, they're going to have lots of water in those ears. With water in those ears and the normal environment of that ear, it's much more likely we'll see things like ear infections. So I know in the past, as I was growing up, and lots of people are comfortable with, you flush those ears out. Use some sort of product to remove the water from the ears and dry that ear out. And that's what the veterinary formulated ear cleanser from Tomlyn will do. It's going to dry those ears out, and it's going to help alleviate some of those conditions that can potentially lead to ear infections. Animals that are in the pool, that are in the beach, in the water all the time are going to be much more likely to experience ear infections. So never ever want to leave your dog unrestricted around the pool. Obviously, if your animal has a chance where he might fall into the pool or gain access despite your best efforts, it's important that you train these animals to know the exit ways, to know where the stairs are, to make sure there is a way they can get out. But I think for the most part, the best we can do is hope we can prevent as much exposure into the pool as possible. And if they do get in the pool, then certain measures to maintain normal level of eye and ear health is appropriate. Kind of getting that kind of covers a lot of our summer questions. There were a few questions that have come up that we'll try to address real quickly. One was about microchips, and certainly microchips have come to the forefront as a way of IDing our dogs. I think it's very important that we do that, because certainly there are many tales of dogs being found and returned to their owners after extended periods of time, and microchips can really aid in that. And this this post was concerned about where the site of the microchip is, that they can feel a lump in there, and they need to know, they're awful concerned about it. And certainly if you get on the internet, you can read about all kinds of horror stories about potential problems with microchips. And I think bottom line is you need to remember that that's a foreign material that's put under the skin. That microchip is foreign to the body, and the body's immune system reacts in different ways in different individuals. So certainly a normal amount of scarring is not necessarily wrong. We want it to form a little capsule around it to basically shield it from the rest of the body. They can become infected. There is no doubt about that. So certainly for me, I think it's another good reason to go visit with your veterinarian. First and foremost, we want to make sure that your local veterinarian can read that chip, that their reader will identify that chip, that the chip is working properly. Secondly, then they can assess the environment, the condition of the skin around that chip to make sure there is no infection, that there is just normal healing going on, that that's normal scar tissue. And with that, I think it would alleviate much of your anxiety. Then we also had another one here just very recently come to post about an owner concerned about constipation issues in her cat. Unfortunately, this cat has sustained some permanent damage to its tail area and will always, for the rest of its life, have some trouble having normal bowel movements. She has tried things like canned pumpkin, which has always been recommended as a fiber and a laxative, and that has been unsuccessful. And she really had some questions about diet and if there's anything else out there. And I know she already has a good relationship with her veterinarian, and this is one where, again, some conversations can be had. You know, one thing I think is going to be to promote a soft stool, which is what this animal's probably going to need the rest of its life. Water consumption is going to be key. So back to our conversations about having access to plenty of water, good quality water. Even if you have to leave a little faucet dripping every now and then to promote the cat to drink is going to be important. As far as diet, canned versus dry, certainly canned diets tend to have more moisture content. With moisture content, we are going to promote perhaps a slightly softer stool. But again, changing diets, things like that, we need to make sure we consult with our veterinarian. There are other stool softeners available that can do just that, that are readily available through the veterinarian or maybe through over-the-counter channels, but again on consultation. We do offer the old Laxatone product. This is called Hairball Remedy. And while it is for hairballs to ball up that hair and allow it to pass, it will serve as a laxative. So your veterinarian may even consider or recommend more of a long-term type laxative that you give as a normal part of that cat's diet. But it's going to be about promoting those soft stools to alleviate the need for further intervention along the way. Let's see here. I'm going to check these a little bit, see if there's anything else out here. Bear with me just a second. You know, again, a question about thunderstorms and anxiety. Again, the more we can alleviate those stressors by decreasing the exposure, adding a supplement like the Relax and Calm is going to help us get us over the hump in many of those situations. Really just wanted to thank you again. We're about out of time today. Again, this was Tomlyn Live Chat on Facebook. My name is Dr. Jim Lowe. Please continue to post those questions as we are going to be doing this again very, very soon. And I really want to try to provide all the content you're looking for. In the meantime, y'all stay safe, stay cool. For Tomlyn USA, I'm Dr. Jim Lowe. Have a good day.